In the culture wars, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Megan Daum and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, brave, and pro-natalist adjacent. Welcome to A Special Place in Hell. It's only adjacent because I'm here. I'm anti-natalist. Well, we'll talk about this.
You're personally... in practice you are, but
I am.
You support us
Look,
in spirit.
You want to know what I think. I'm an ally, but yes, I am children for thee, but not for me.
I'm fine with that.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. Well, phew. So Razib Khan is back in the house. Thank you. Returning guest, Razib Khan, population geneticist, super substacker. Anything else?
Yeah.
How do you identify?
Just go to Razib.com. I'm writing for Palladium magazine a lot.
Razib.com, you have like your first name? You have that? That's
yes,
great.
I'm old, Sarah. I have like my email is my name on Gmail. Like I have a lot of that. So I have Razib.com is where all my stuff is. My Substack's RazibKhan.com.
That's
I'm contributing a lot to Palladium. I want to mention them. Really
okay, we'll get to this at the end. This is the kind of stuff you say at the end. So let's get into the substance. Okay. So you were here several months ago, but we have now recently read about you in a publication suggesting that you are a white supremacist, and I think we all knew this,
right?
And we can tell by just looking at you. But do you want to explain yourself?
Sure. So I'll give like a quick high level sketch for the people that don't listen to every single one of your podcasts because you guys mentioned it. I was a speaker at the Pro-Natalist Conference. As I told you guys before we just came on, there were some people who were going to speak at the Pro-Natalist Conference, like Louise Perry, James Poulos, that I knew. I'm also good friends IRL with Peachy Keenan.
Okay, this is the pro-natalist conference that happened in Austin at the end of last year that we were not invited to.
It's called Natal Conference. Just not pro-natalist, just natal.
Oh, just natal. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's natal like 2023 or whatever. It was in December.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the first time they were getting us together. It was candidly, they learned a lot. Let's put it that way. In any case, a bunch of people had to pull out for various reasons. It had nothing to do with the ideological issues. It just timing and people traveling from abroad. And also, I guess I'm going to say this because it happened, but there were some childcare issues.
Well, so they didn't provide like daycare or anything.
They should have had daycare.
At Natal.
They should have had a ball pit right next to the mosh pit.
No. There was ad hoc. There were women that were watching the babies. Like I watched the babies for a little while. So,
okay, but this is the first thing that I would think about if I was.
I know. So it was
producing women who were watching the babies.
I mean, I can tell you,
nannies.
From what I remember, I heard Alex Kashuda couldn't make it because of that.
Yeah, but they need to have childcare. They need to have activities like a kids club, like they would at like, a cruise or like a resort.
They should have had the whole thing on a cruise ship. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
So all right. So I emailed Kevin Dolan, who organized it. I think he's doxxed now. It's not a big deal. Bennett's phylactery. He had a cancellation. So anyway, he uses a pseudo a lot of the time, but his name is known, Kevin Dolan. He was the organizer, kind of like the keynote speaker. And anyway, we kind of know each other on the internet. And so I messaged him. I was like, bro, like I would like to speak because I live in Austin. And, I get a +1. And also, I know a lot of the speakers. And what happened was like, a lot of the speakers, and it was like me that was left. And like there were some other people like Peachy Keenan and stuff like that. But, I have to say, honestly, like I was left as one of the more prominent speakers outside of like the niche of like people like Kevin Dolan, who has 8 kids at 34 or whatever, So he's obviously like a superstar. He practices what he preaches, but people don't know who he is. People know who I was. So they were going to have to write a hit piece on the conference because it's a right-wing conference. And, you Google the people, I come up. I've been canceled like about every year and a half since about 2015. So, I was like, they tried to make me like the little centerpiece of my far right associations, which are fair. at this far right conference. So, you know, they tried to make it into, you know, patriarchy, white supremacy, all that stuff.
So it was a far right conference, because that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
and
so
Megan
it's-
was
I'm
just like, I
interested
don't know about
you're
that,
calling
but
it that.
I was like, but
I
I
mean,
think it.
so
I
I know
mean,
for a fact. So you guys talked about this. I did float your name, but I was actually worried by the time that happened that it was so far right that it would ruin your branding, Sarah. And so then I was like, never mind.
I don't feel
I
like
mean, they were
I have
okay with it.
For her to
branding.
decide.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but in
Okay,
any case,
whatever.
for-
Maybe I'm being too patriarchal, but like,
yeah.
Sarah's always like, "Oh, I'm not,"
which is on
conservative.
brand actually for the far right conference. So there
Yeah,
you go.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
Keynote speaker.
But anyway, so they wanted more women. They wanted more libs. The women, they kind of got a few more. They could not get anyone who was not right wing, just because of the optics. Like they tried, and they're gonna try again. It's just not gonna happen because left wing people do not want to be seen with right wing people, right?
But what at this point, the kinds of people who are left wing who would be invited to this to participate, I mean, what are they going to lose? You know what I mean? Like
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know who they asked.
I think it's just I think it's.
So Matt Iglesias says he will come to next year's natal, and
Okay.
I will get him that invite. You know,
Okay.
he is. I don't even know if you would consider him a progressive anymore, but whatever, it's close enough. You know.
Yeah, but
I would
he's
like to see, like-
uncancelable because he has his own thing now,
Yeah,
so he can come.
Yeah. Like Matt Brunig would be a good candidate. Like he's socialist, you know, whatever. So there's some, you know, there's a lot of people on the left. You know, like for example, there's a lot of people on the right who, like, I support abortion rights. You know, we don't like shout about it all the time. It's not like a big thing. I mean, it's becoming a bigger thing because it's under threat. But the point is, there's a lot of people on the left who are also pro-natalist, but it's not something they talk about because they talk about other things like, I don't know, like health care access or something, you know?
Mhm.
And so it's not like a salient issue, but you know, there's a lot of people we could get. So overall though, it's got a negative polarization issue, I think is what happened to it. There was my presentation. I got to post the slides somewhere. They're not like super controversial, but my presentation was basically I tried to reconcile the two camps, and you guys kind of pointed to the division. There were the trads. So like someone like Peachy is a trad-cath, like she's against surrogacy, gays and everything like that. And I'm not saying in a mean way. She's a cosmopolitan person from LA, you know?
She's against gays hiring surrogates and gays existing.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Let's
shouldn't
be
say it
clear.
like
Just
that.
against
Okay. She'll
gays,
get
like
mad.
what?
Well,
Okay.
I mean, no. I mean, she's very socially conservative, you know?
Okay.
So like she's
Socially
I'll
conservative
just
for
say it.
like
she's the
she's
type of
against
person
gay
that would
marriage.
not go to a gay wedding. Yeah, she would not go to a gay
Oh,
wedding.
wow.
I know that for a
Wow,
fact.
that's
okay?
that's
Even
conservative.
Dave
That's-
Rubin's?
Yes, exactly.
especially Dave Rubin.
I don't.
Wow.
He has kids.
It's
too,
not
right,
Dave
right?
Rubin, but there's someone else. Daily Wire Associated had a gay wedding. They did not go. Okay,
Mm.
Peachy and her husband did not. It was a huge thing. Not just her. It was like a huge thing on the right who went and who didn't go.
Oh,
So she's
wow.
one of those who didn't go. So there's people like her, and she's actually like, you know, raised. I mean, she's self-doxed herself to a great extent now, so I can say this. She was raised as a secular Jewish woman, so her background is very cosmopolitan. She's not like what you would like imagine as a trad-cath, whatever, mother of.
Oh,
I think,
so she's a
6?
convert to.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
both her and her husband. Although he's culturally from that background, he is also. I know them personally. I mean, I was hanging out with them. I hang out with them. Actually, like I was hanging out with them in LA, like at the sexual revolution
But that's
debate.
true of like a lot of these like far right commentators. I feel like they come.
Sure.
They're actually stemming from very cosmopolitan places. I'm
Yeah.
surprised when they're actually from like truly from
Well,
Sure.
yeah,
the
because they
backcountry
would make it
Virginia
the
somewhere.
commentator land. It's less
It's
likely.
also the approach. Like it's like
Yeah.
there is an element of it that is just in response to what is going on in liberal spaces. We're adopting or like reinvigorating or recognizing in ourselves the importance of certain things. So there's an element of we started here and now we're shifting this way that can really come from a certain kind of like city person.
And also the just salt of the earth, like people in the Midwest having their kids and, you know, grilling.
Yeah,
You know
they're
what I'm
not on
saying?
like back
Doing
channels
their
of
church
anything. Yeah,
things.
they're going to.
Yeah, they're not in my group chats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're. I saw somebody
for example,
on
I have
Twitter
very-
call them like bass Shop Pro. What is it?
Sure.
Fishing that fishing.
So one of the things that I will say is, like, in the right wing spaces that I'm in, there are very few evangelical Protestants. There's a lot of trad-caths. There's a lot of like atheist, Nietzschean, or libertarian types, but there's no evangelical Protestant Christian coalition type, whatever, those type of people. And they are the foot soldiers of the right, but they're not, frankly, well represented in the intelligentsia, and that's just the reality. And so
I don't think would the intelligentsia even be able to relate with them as well as they can relate to, like, honestly, like squishes and centrists and like libs even.
Not socially.
Yeah.
Not socially.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, but like not socially. And like, like I said, like I'm very open about my views. I'm not like super social. I'm socially conservative in some ways, but in other ways I'm not, right? And so I'm very open. They don't have a problem with it. A lot of them are pretty cosmopolitan. I mean, actually, a lot of them were liberal. Like, I've never been liberal, so I've never had that journey, So a lot of them can understand what it's like to be a lib or even woke, or an Obama supporter, which I can't, Like, I've just basically been the same for my adult life, whereas, many of them have gone through life journeys, and now they believe the Pope should be the emperor. So I don't know.
Yeah, they tend to ricochet hard.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's get back to this conference. So was the idea that we're in a real crisis here and something must be done and we're going to come up with solutions? What was kind of the mission statement?
So I don't know about the solutions part. People did present solutions. But I think, yes, people do believe there's a crisis. As you guys know, the TFR has gone from 2.1 to 1.6 in the US in the last 15 years.
That's TFR,
total fertility rate.
So the average number of children a woman can expect to have has gone from, we were at replacement. So our whole, as Megan and I were growing up, the America was like the great developed world exception, where we didn't have any population crisis in any way. We didn't need immigration or anything like that. We were self-sustaining. And then after the financial crisis of 2008, when someone like Sarah comes into her adulthood, everything crashed. And initially they said, oh, well, it's the financial crisis. But it wasn't. It just keeps going down slowly, and it never went back up. So it was a massive collapse in a couple of years of like 0.5, and it just kind of has stayed there. And so we're like a European nation now. We actually have a lower fertility than France, some of these European nations. And that means like all of the
France,
other problems.
Is that, how much of that is like immigration?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Like, no, even without immigration, you can correct for that. There's various ways. Even
maybe
like
it's a Catholic.
They call rude. Even rude French. It's a lot of it is, yes, religious people do have more children, but
Catholics have more children though, right? Like even
no,
if you
like in Spain, a lot of the Catholic countries have massive
Italy, they're not having
Italy, right.
Spain, they collapse. But the issue in France is there's a cultural norm. So I remember like Royale, like the socialist candidate, for example, was it 2007? She had 4 kids. Like a lot of elite people, even on the left in France, have a lot of kids, so it's not socially weird.
Why?
And because France was the first nation to undergo the demographic transition in the early 19th century. So they've been obsessed with not being replaced for about 200 years. They used to think they were going to get replaced by Polish and Spanish Catholics. Like that was like the big fear in the 1820s and 1830s. And so, they try to figure out how they could increase their population, blah, blah, blah. They obviously have the subsidies that you guys probably know of, have heard about. Daycare is pretty much universal, all sorts of things going on, but also the social norms and expectations are different. I've heard of, I know people who are French, who are professionals, and they have 3 or 4 children and they're not religious, which is just weird in America.
Yeah, really weird. And I think that some of it must be how the expectations of parents is different than the kind of helicopter, like extreme parenting that you see with us.
Yes. Yes.
I know that they are kind of a case study in how to sort of just let kids go.
Yeah. In terms of, and they also like eating food. In terms of food, they don't have like baby food. They give them like types of normal adult food. Kids walk around. I know that for a fact because I had a friend who recently went to France, and it's. She kind of said it feels like the 70s or 80s. you know,
Nice.
just in
Okay.
America where,
Mhm.
because like today you have to, you know, like there are states where it's illegal to be more than like half a mile from your house if you're under
Right.
10. It's not always enforced, but you know, cops can use that to keep kids under check and stuff like that. Also, like in places like Austin, it also seems very class based. So like
Mhm.
upper middle class neighborhoods, you don't see kids around. They're in their houses, and then they go into their little minivan pods, and they go from point to point transportation by the moms or dads. Whereas I don't go to these neighborhoods very often, but they're these like lower class neighborhoods, mostly Latinos, and you see kids around,
Mhm.
walking around
Making
without
up their own,
adults.
like plans.
They're
Like,
just
okay, we're
doing
gonna go
things,
here.
and
Yeah, they're just
like
doing
nobody
things on their
cares.
own. Yeah.
Nobody cares. But if you saw a kid walking down the street in some of the neighborhoods to the west or north of UT,
Mhm.
like let's say Westlake, like if I saw a kid walking around Westlake, and I think Sarah knows exactly what I'm talking about, I'd be just like, what is going on with that kid? Is that a delinquent? Like something is up, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
But there's other parts of like East and Southeast Austin where it's just like, yeah, kids just walking around. They're just chilling.
Yeah. Yeah. That has to come back, but I don't know how because I think the parents themselves are too anxious to let their kids go.
Yeah, I can't see it coming back. Can you?
Yeah. I mean,
Razib?
but people have, people are
I mean,
trying
it
to
depends on where you
experiment with
go,
communities. Yeah.
who you hang out with. You know, so I have friends who moved into the country to let their kids roam.
Mhm.
You guys know Colin Wright. So I can tell you because I've been to his parents' house, and they specifically bought a house on a property with a massive kind of, I'd say, acreage in the back that's kind of wooded, and also there's woodlands. And basically, Colin and his brothers could just like run around there. And so they specifically selected. I mean, they had the means, obviously. Not
But
everyone has the means.
it was their property. Was it
Yeah,
fenced?
it's
Okay.
not. No, from
It
what
was
I
like
remember,
a
it wasn't fenced. There were other properties that were
okay.
adjacent that had like
Right.
this sort of like undeveloped aspect. And but I remember, you know, talking to Colin, and he was like, yeah, his parents specifically did that because otherwise they'd be in a suburban cul-de-sac, and they know that the life that they would have to live, right? So some people proactively anticipate that. I have other friends who, you know, moved to Montana and did other things. Like these are extreme, they're perceived to be extreme things, but people will do it.
Mhm.
Whereas in other situations, you know, when I had my kids at the playground in Davis, California, when I was in grad school, both my wife and I we were explicitly pretty laissez-faire. We also didn't care if they fell, because like some parents, when a child falls, it's like at the end of the world. Or they try to actually grab the kid.
So
Before
bad.
they
Kid
fall.
doesn't
Yeah.
They
fall.
make it the end of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
it's terrible for the kid. It's sending a message that this is the end of the world. Just let
But
it
you know,
go.
so we would just like let and we told our nanny at the time to just like let the kid just be, keep distance. You know, you maybe have like a line of sight, but and there were people that would give us like the skunk eye, you know, and I
Mhm.
didn't care. But you know, we didn't care, but it was just like a thing you had to deal with, like a little bit of social ostracism. I don't really care about social ostracism. I think you guys can tell that, so it wasn't a big deal for me.
That's why
You
we
Yeah.
don't
know,
even I mean, I wonder what you guys think too. Like it always struck me as sort of weird double standard because the suburbs can be dangerous because you've got cars, you got when teenagers start driving, that's dangerous. Okay, that's a layer of risk. But in big cities like New York City in particular, arguably it's safer for kids. Like if you're
but there's
walking
no,
around,
yeah,
yeah, there's people around.
yeah,
The chances of being abducted, despite like these edge cases that were all over the milk cartons in our time, pretty low. I
Extremely
think you're
low.
actually safer growing up in like a decent urban neighborhood than in a
sure.
lot of suburban areas
It's
because
just
you
the
just
cars that
the cars in
I'm
and of
worried about the
themselves are a
cars.
huge
I'm worried
risk.
about like the pits, like pit bulls going around
Oh,
here
well,
and there. I'm worried about them. I'm worried about the cars. I have a neighborhood filled with like, like really nice like white people, and so there's a lot of like rescue pits who like scary, super frightening dogs.
oh,
So there's
Okay,
that,
yeah.
and then the cars. But if I could go without those two things, I would just be like, whatever, wander away.
I mean,
I
like, would you
trust the
let your
adults.
kid I mean, it seems like taking the subway is actually or certainly taking the bus is actually, much safer than
I've
getting in
seen
a
kids
car.
take the bus. I've seen
used
it.
to be
Like,
They take
normal.
the bus all the
Yeah.
time. Well, they
Yeah.
take the
Yeah,
bus
it
all
used
the
to-
time in New York
yeah.
City and the subway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't see that commonly. Like, I don't see kids, like in my neighborhood, I don't see kids without an adult figure nearby that
But
commonly,
of
unless
how
they're
old,
older
though?
kids.
What's the cutoff?
Unless they're much older, unless they're like
Tweens. They have to be
yeah,
tweens.
basically tweens.
Yeah.
And I think they can go by themselves when they're much younger than that. Much younger.
I mean, I did.
I did.
Like,
I did.
Yeah, I walked to the library when I was like 7. It was a mile away.
I was in
totally.
Pakistan. You know what I mean? Like, this was not super safe place, and I would just go with my like younger cousins, and we just like wander around like the back alley of our house.
Yeah, it's just what
not
you did.
safe.
It's just what you did.
It was gross. It was a gross. Well, we didn't really want to be there, but still, it was. You know, it was. You just did it, and
Yeah.
parents didn't worry.
That's
much.
the weird thing. The people of my generation, I'm Gen X, younger Gen X, we remember the before times, and yet we impose this crap on our kids. You know?
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. Like, why is this? And not only do we remember it, we're so self-congratulatory about it. Gen
Even though
Xers
you did not do anything but
love to talk
experience
about
it.
how tough we were, and we were the latchkey kids, and we were home all the time, and we microwaved our own dinners, and we walked to school, you know, without any shoes on practically, and yet we turn around and impose the exact opposite.
Why do you think that has happened, Megan?
Yeah.
Like, what's the or
Nobody
either of
knows.
you,
I wonder
either.
if it's something to do with like the amplifying negativity or fear input from the media, like the kids on the cartons.
Oh,
start off the kids on the
sure.
cartons.
But I think that Gen Xers, especially a lot of the women, are angry at their mothers. I mean, that was the first cohort to go to work. You know, certainly in the middle classes, that was the first, you know, white middle class, upper middle class women going to work at that time in the 80s. And yeah, those, I mean, literally it was called the latchkey kids. And like these kids would have the key around their neck on a shoestring, and then they would come home and let themselves in the house. And I think that there's a certain resentment of that, and there's an overcompensation as a result. So that's one theory.
I feel like I would have loved. I mean, there was a time I was just an older teenager when I was a latchkey kid, I guess, and it was great. I don't know.
I mean, when I was a kid, my parents would they would just leave me home when I was like 6, and I would just watch TV. I remember watching I watched the TV version of Conan the Destroyer when I was 6. My parents were gone. It's kind of scary,
like,
actually.
Don't do anything. Don't turn on the
Well, if you have the TV on, you're not scared. That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I know.
That's
I
fair.
remember actually when I was probably 7 maybe, and we were living in Austin, actually, of all places, when I was that age. And I remember there was a little weird period of time where my dad was out, my dad was going to come home, but my mom would go to work or something, and like there was maybe like I couldn't have been more than an hour or something where it was like I was home by myself for this little window of time, and you know, I was allowed to have cartoons on, because that was the thing, like, just don't go away from the TV. Like, they literally were just like, you can have the cartoons on, just don't go anywhere, and then somebody will come home. And it was quite empowering, I have to say.
I think it is. Like, things like that, they do make you feel stronger and more competent. Like, the first time you do something like wild like that gives you a sense, like a true sense of strength. And that's what so many people in my generation, I think, are missing. Really a little bit younger than me, where you see it like become intense. Like, you know, 7 to 10 years younger than me is when you see it become just debilitating, you know, and they just never really grow out of. I mean, I notice it in even among like my family members, and we're less protective of our, you know, just because that's just the way we are. We're just less protective. But even then, I noticed that the 20-year-olds don't really act like they're like you would almost think that they are 13 by their behavior.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Not to say that they're like deeply immature, but just developmental stage, like what they're willing to do, what they're willing to take on, how they go about their day, what their activities are, and how much their mom knows about them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like location. Location sharing with your parents when you're in your 20s is weird to me.
Oh my God.
Why would you want to do that? Also, okay, I'm not gonna say who this is, but it's someone I know very well, and she still shares her. I'm not gonna. Anyway, email account with her parents in her 20s. And I'm just like, what the hell?
I can't stand it when couples do that. like husbands and wives, like an old.
Well, that's
like, little older people.
but
I
that's
can't
the
stand
logistics
that. Can
thing.
you
When are you
imagine
coming
your
home?
parents?
Do I need to, like, when are you coming home with the groceries? I need to know,
But that's
and I
what
can know
texting
if
is
you're
for.
just like, I mean,
But that's
then you're tied to your phone. I don't know. Like, then you have to check all the time, and I don't know.
wait, Sarah, are you
There.
pro location sharing with your parents?
Not with my parents, but with
With your husband?
my husband. But I don't know if we do it. I don't think I've ever. I think he does, but I don't think I've ever checked it. So maybe
my
it's not
God.
that useful. But
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. My kids do have Garmins, so we can track them. They can turn it off. I don't care, but they're kind of more scared actually than we are.
yeah,
We
Yeah.
don't want to give them cell phones to call, so they have the Garmins. They can text or record a message if they want. But you know, whatever. Like we know where they are. They're at soccer practice or whatever. You know.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, here's a question, Razib, for you, maybe. So Sarah and I were talking the other day about, these photographs that go around on social media of like images of teenagers from the past, like, a shot of high school kids from the 1980s or something like that. And people will always comment about how old they look. I mean, there was one going around a video the other day of like prom photos from 1986, but there's also, you've just seen classroom shots and, there's a kind of vintage quality to the photo just because it's film photo and all kinds of things, but they do look notably older. And so I was wondering if you have thoughts about that as a geneticist or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, my first thought, because I've talked to multiple people about this. I mean, also their face. The first thing is like a lot of people notice their faces are more angular,
Mm-hmm.
and I think partly it's just like people are fat today. Kids are fat. So fat people, the fatter you are, or the baby. I have a baby face. Even if I'm not fat, I have like a roundy face with a lot of subcutaneous fat, so I look younger. And a lot of kids today, a lot of teens, are fat. And their faces are fatter. So I think that's one of the things. Because if you look at, especially, I mean, for obvious reasons, you look at people from the 1930s and they have these like very elegant, chiseled faces.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah, those
"'Cause they
Dust
not
Bowl
be
photos, those
Yeah.
Dorothea Lange, those people are hot.
No, but
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
they did look older too. I mean, not just more angular.
Well, I
like
mean, what you would
straight
say,
up.
if you want to talk about the geneticist perspective, you could say that they probably experienced what we call epigenetic insults. So that means like, various shocks to the system. They do age you.
Wait,
So
even
you
the
could get,
80s kids? Wait. Really? What do you
well, I mean, for the 30s, I'm
the
talking about
30s? Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes. Yeah, okay.
With the 80s kids, I would think like more the tail end of lead, maybe secondhand smoke, other things like that. I don't want to overdo it. I think a lot of it has to do with makeup, affect, and
Styling, yeah.
also obesity. Obesity, because one thing that people don't talk about enough, I think, and I think it's because it's like awkward to talk about. Lipids are a hormonal signaler. So, like, I know you guys talk about like, like puberty hormones and all that stuff for teens, but actually, we've just been doing it for like 30 years. It's just fat kids have weird signalings. I mean, that's why like the polycystic, what is it? Ozempic is making women pregnant. That was the headline. Google
Wait,
it,
is
right?
that? Yeah, I saw that headline. What does that mean?
Because they lose weight and so they're more fertile.
Yeah. Also, their metabolic syndrome gets cleared. There's all sorts of issues associated with metabolic syndrome and obesity.
Mm-hmm.
But lipids, the key is like lipids, like fat cells. They're signalers. So a common thing that I've seen with men that have done gastric bypass, I don't know too many guys so far that have done Ozempic. I know some people, but don't know them well. Gastric bypass, they lose a lot of weight, and these like jolly fat dudes talk to me about rage issues. And I explained to them it's called being a man, bro.
Oh shoot!
Like so the testosterone, estrogen balance has shifted in their bodies because the lipids were kind of. I forget if it ups the estrogen. I think it ups the estrogen, and so they have this ratio. So they're like happy, more sensitive, and funny. Like some of it is partly just because they're fat, so they have to be funny. But I've talked to multiple guys who've had gastric. They've lost weight, and they're like, I'm kind of surly. Like, what's up with that? Why do I want to punch that guy's face in? And I'm just like, dude, just chill out. This is just a normal feeling. You get over it. And like this is a really big issue for the guys that I know who've been fat their whole you see pictures of them and when they're 8, they're chubby. So they never really, I'm gonna say this because this is like a weird thing to say, but it's like they never really experienced themselves as a man.
Yeah, so
because
there's a sort of feminizing. Fat is a feminizing factor,
yes,
and
yes,
also
and their
alliterative.
personality was feminized their whole life, and then they're 35, they get gastric bypass, they lose 100 pounds, they're like, I mean, if not jacked, they look shredded, their faces are square, and now they want to beat the crap out of people all the time when they annoy them, and people annoy them all the time.
Right.
know?
Wait, but let's go back to this. This is fascinating. So, like the secondhand smoke thing, I never thought of that. So, like these kids in the 70s,
Sure.
like 70s kids, even, I mean, basically anybody. So, 50s, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, a lot of people smoking in the households. I think we forget this. So many people's parents smoked. It was totally normal to walk in any place, any restaurant, any bar, people smoking cigarettes. There were smoking sections on airplanes. I mean, seriously. So that would change the sort of characteristics of your face and your skin potentially.
Yeah, I don't want to this is again to be tested. But so what happens is so obviously the reason you have a nose here and eye here is your tissues expressing differently in your body. Like if people want to like Google Razib Khan epigenetics, I wrote an explanation about it. But what epigenetics basically does is it controls how the cells in your body differentiate and modulate and express whatever they need to express, right? So for example, there's a gene that's usually turned off that's common in a lot of organisms, which is a reflex to being burned or overheated, right? And so it's like how the cell is repairing its tissue and all that stuff. So that gene is turned on in response to the input of really high temperature, right? Like thermogenesis or whatever. There's other types of genes that respond to, toxins, quote unquote, I'll use a generic term, but carcinogens as well in the environment. And so the genes are turning on. And why are the genes not always turned on? Well, why is your body not always in shock just in case? There are stresses that are associated with certain physiological responses. Because it's literally a stress. It's a stress on your body, and the stress on your body is affecting you on the cellular level. Now, this sounds kind of new age at this point because new age people love this stuff, but it's based on real science. And the real science is when you go through shocks, it tends to affect your body. I'll give you a concrete example that I always think about. There is a book by an adopted Indian woman who grew up in Spain. I forget, it's like something like Other Daughter or something. But it's her experience of like going back to India. And she came from a very poor rural peasant family. And she had like an older sister who was 3 years older. And there's a picture of them together. I think the woman in the picture was 30 and her sister was 33. And they looked like 25 years different. Like her sister looked like an old woman. So genetically, obviously they're sisters, but
I've seen this with my cousins in Pakistan, where my younger cousins will look like 10, 15 years, like the ones I remember being babies, like being born, and I remember that, and they look 10, 15 years older than I do.
Yeah, I don't want to say that this is a real thing, but one thing that I've noticed in South Asia, because like sometimes I have to do calls with people for business and work, like so for engineers, for example, do a call with an engineer in Mumbai, and it's just like, unless they like can really seal it, it's always really loud, which like I'm chill with, and like if you live in New York, you're probably chill with, but like that's a lot of ambient sound, and I'm sure it would get like a warning in the United States. So there's like all of these inputs in these very, very crowded environments. There is some evidence that the urban living can cause issues, obviously, disease, dirt, crowding. In the West, in particular, public health was a really big deal. It was actually developed in the United States to deal with immigrants in tenements. And so, excuse me, we have it under control. But, the people who live in Delhi right now, their air pollution is just crazy. And, they have to think about what they're going to put their kids through. Because, I know people who don't take jobs in New Delhi, like expats that are located like southern India, and they're like, no, I'm not going to get the 50% raise because I'm not going to expose my kids to that air pollution.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
you're starting to sound like pretty left wing, actually.
Yeah, really.
Hey, I'm just trying to
You're a climate catastrophist.
No, I get it.
I'm not a climate catastrophist at all. The world's getting better. So.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so what else? What are some other awkward questions we can ask
So we're done with natal con. There's nothing, and so you wait.
Well, so I didn't tell you what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I don't think we're done with it. Let's go back.
No, what I said. So my presentations, I'm friends with like all these people that do DNA stuff because I am a DNA person, but I'm also a very friendly person. A lot of my Catholic friends think I'm eventually going to convert, so they're always really nice to me. And so I have friends that are like trad-caths and friends that are very not trad-caths. And so, my whole pitch was like, look, this was mostly actually aimed at the trad-caths because like I'm in a lot of group chats with them, and like I just think that they're just not really realistic about where the world is that they live in. And so I'm just like, look, I understand that you think these people are satanic and you're not really wrong, but sometime you have to ally with dark forces to defeat darker forces, and right now, attacking the people that are allowing people to have children through reproductive technology, this is, I don't even want to say like how it's an own goal, but it's a massive own goal, And as far as like the, people like Diana Fleischman, who I'm really good friends with, for example, and I'm friends with, people like Peachy Keenan as well. And it's just like they get along fine in real life. And Diana, as you know, is a very acceptable, like very nice person, but she's also kind of a, sexual degenerate and atheist and all these other things. That's also true. And she'll own it. She's a eugenicist. She'll own it. But the reality is, right now in the culture where we are, Diana making fun of Catholics for being prude and Catholics wanting to put Diana in a cage in the public square is not useful. Like, that's not where we're at right now. First of all, it's not going to happen, So you're just wasting time insulting people. So I just basically told people, like, look, deal with your issues later when we're actually winning this game and we have like a culture that actually values life and children and future generations and all these things that we kind of all agree on. Like, for example, like, people like Diana, they are, well, I mean, I'm probably more like her, honestly, but whatever. People like us, we are technically pro-life. Like, we want humans to go to the stars. We want humans to be healthy and happy, and we want there to be more humans and all that stuff. We're technically pro-life. Yes, there's going to be a lot of aborted fetuses along the way, okay? And I understand that is a genocide for the trad-caths, but, we're not the only ones that are, we're not the only problems there. Like, you got bigger problems in the bigger society, and really, like, you don't have the numbers to force your views on people, is what I just, like, tell the trad-caths. You can say whatever you want to. Nobody cares, because you don't really argue with people where they are. They're a little bit like, I don't want to like crap on them too much. They're a little bit like leftists, where it's like the leftists will have these like, narcissistic little arguments among themselves and refuse to engage with the mainstream because, the mainstream's fascist or something.
Well, also this is totally unrealistic. I mean, they're like, it's a utopian mindset. Like, what do the trad-caths think that everyone is just gonna? They have it's the AI trad meme fantasy of like the milkmaid in the forest. Like, what are they thinking?
Not necessarily. I mean, some of them, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is online LARPing.
Yeah,
a lot of it is just being in echo chambers. A lot of people being in echo chambers where everybody, and I'm often the only one who just like, because like I'm very disagreeable, I don't give a shit. I'll just be like, yeah, like I kind of think fetuses should be killed in the first trimester if they're retarded, And then of course, like they get super mad at me, but they're like, we still love you because, you just.
I think it's nice when all these people come together like this. I think it's a nice thing, and it's too bad.
Yeah, and like we actually got along. Yeah. We socialized fine in real life. It wasn't a big deal. I just, I basically, people are going to snipe and they're going to say little things, and that's fine. Just like keep it in check and understand in the real world, none of this matters. It's just wasted energy. Okay.
Right. How were people talking about things like artificial wombs and surrogacy? Like, I mean, and what do you think about that?
I'm more about, I divided into two groups, trads and technos. I'm more of a techno. Okay. I use like dude analogies, but basically look, if you listen to my podcast, I'm advertising a whole genome embryo screening company. And I know I've had some Catholic listeners unsubscribe, and they've told me for that reason. Okay. So what I would say is, so I have 3 children and we had no problem. I don't believe in God, but I was blessed in that way. Like there was no stresses. We had 3 kids every 2 years between 35 and 40. Okay. So I don't know. I don't believe in God, but maybe God believes in me. I'll say it that way. Because I know people that have gone through like really horrible struggles. I don't even want to talk about it because like they're still going through that. Honestly, they're not going to have children. They're not going to have biological children. Okay. The people that I'm thinking of do not listen to my podcast. So I would never say this to their face, but they know and we know. It's something that's like unsaid. Okay. And so I just like, I'm not a very compassionate person, but like I have enough compassion there. It's like, I'm not going to say no. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just because like you have a religious view, I don't give a fuck. It's like, and I've talked to evangelical Christians who like, they also agree with me. They're like, we're not going to say no. We're not Catholic. We just can't say no. Even if
Wait, sorry. Say no to
say
what?
no to things like in vitro fertilization,
right?
Reproductive technology. It's like, are you gonna stand at the door and block them?
They are.
No, you're not
they
going
do
to.
that
Okay.
They do that with gays, right? Like, I mean, they do want to do that with gays to some degree.
That's fair, but gays are a tiny minority that you can target because there's other issues going on there. But like, well, like you're not white, so maybe someone more sympathetic. But Sarah, if you were white, a young white Baptist girl who cannot have children.
Why would I be Baptist? Are you saying I'm like low status? That's how I'm coming across to you.
But anyway, but no, my point is like you're not going to say no to those people. Those are people who go to reproductive clinics and then they thank God.
Yeah.
For their baby, for their miracle, right?
Right.
And so, I just presented this to like the trad-caths. I'm like, this is the reality of America you live in, not the America that you're imagining. So arguing with people like my friend Johnny Anomaly or Diana Fleischman, it's like you've already lost this war in so many different ways. This is like you're like a Civil War like lost cause person.
Well, I like the way that you put it right there, where the Baptist young woman is going to get IVF and then she's going to thank God. I think that is kind of showcasing like a manifestation of that difference that we were just talking about, where I think some of these intellectuals of the trad-cath movement can't relate to the average. The average person on the ground who isn't going to intellectualize IVF, like they're going to do what they do with IVF that they do with every other modern phenomena, and they're going to thank God and they're going to feel blessed, truly. And they're not going to feel as if it infringes on their religious anything in any way, in their world.
Just to tie this, what I will say, and I kind of said this, actually I kind of said this in the talk, I was like, calling, like someone like Diana Fleischman, an atheistic eugenicist whore, is not going to create a culture of life.
Are they calling her that? The trad-caths?
Well, and a lot of it is like personal attacks. Okay, a lot of it is like personal attacks. You know how it works on the internet. Like the whole A-list, all that. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
A lot of like energy is devoted. A lot of like mind space is taken up with these personal gossipy attacks. I'm just like, we're at this conference not because of gossip. We're at this conference because there's a serious issue.
This is happening in the gender space too. All this infighting. And
that's such
counterproductive. Yeah.
No, I see men, like right-wing men, saying a lot of that horror stuff like comes from right-wing men. I've seen it. Like,
yeah, and it's a sort of incel trad.
Although it's not just men. Like there's some of the trad-cath women are very, very, well, not even trad-caths. I think it's Louise against surrogacy too.
Well, yeah. See this, yes, Louise Perry. So this is what I want to drill down on, because, I mean, I think a lot of there's a lot of reasonable arguments against surrogacy. But at the same time, if the goal is to have more babies and make more people able to be parents, you need to sort of decide. And so I wonder how the talks were around those kinds of questions.
Well, I mean,
leftist. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but there were techno talks. There were techno talks. Like there were talks about like reproductive technology. I brought it up. I mean, I told people, I was like, look, artificial wombs are going to be here within a generation. You could try to ban it. You could do something. That is the future that's confronting us. But like, right now it's not here. So give it 30 years. Like, do you want to fight 30 years battles now? Right now we're battling a lot of other things in the culture. And so like let's focus on these battles. In terms of like technology, Johnny Anomaly was there, and he has a company that does screening type things, and Diana Fleischman is writing a book on eugenics. So those people were there. There were like I was there. I mean, I'm not like very.
Were there.
Yeah,
I never know how
they're
to
in
do
a very different category.
Yeah,
the Collinses, Simone and Malcolm.
They're in a very different category from the rest of the human race, and I have said this to their face.
I was just on their podcast. It was a really fun conversation.
No, I was on there. Yeah, I love them. They're great, but it's just like they're really inexplicable to everybody. That's outside of their little dyad.
They're
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're their own thing.
But yes, they are more open to technology. They're more I think there was something called the tech right that people were talking about. They're part of the tech right.
Can you just explain who they are briefly for our listeners who don't know who we're talking about?
Yeah, Malcolm and Simone Collins I think they're like natalist influencers. Is what they have like 3 kids.
Yeah, we'll have them on the. They have them on our podcast. I gotta respond. Shit.
Yeah, we're gonna have them. Yeah. Well, they only have 3 kids. I thought.
Yeah, they're still working on it.
They're gonna harvest. They talk about harvest season.
Yeah.
Actually,
well, I have a lot of friends. Who have embryos frozen, and
they have their own religion. They have their own religion, and they can tell us. Okay, we'll talk to them. Yeah.
Yeah, they do have their own religion. It's like a form of Collins Calvinism.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's super weird.
But even their approach to like the terminology they use when they're looking back at tradition, like at other cultures and traditional like practices, they'll call them like social technologies from the past kind of thing, which is that's a unique way of phrasing it.
I mean, the gap between me and the Collins is lower than far lower than the gap between the Collinses and a trad-cath. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like privately, I would say that.
It's not private.
But again, they're really hard to pin down, and you've met them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. They are characters. They're very eccentric. In the past, there would be a sitcom about them. I mean, that's how they are. They can't help but be funny. They're not even trying.
I agree with them on a lot. I felt as if there was a lot of resonance, even if my instincts weren't exactly the same as theirs on all of the experimentation, huh?
That's because you're right wing.
Am I right wing?
No.
But I think I do have some instincts that I think like Ayla, for example, like 50% of me like totally gets Ayla. And then there are aspects where I feel as if my nature is pulling in a very different direction. And when she was on our podcast, we were talking about disgust as like a feeling that sexual disgust as a feeling that as something that she doesn't feel, but I feel a lot of.
Oh my God.
I'm
not going to tell you the story. I'm not going to tell you the story, but I have multiple dinners with her where I'm like, can we limit what we talk about because I'm having these delicious scallops?
Okay, we should refresh people's memories if we're going to drop names. Ayla is she's been a guest on the show, and she calls herself a whore lord. I don't know
that's
how
just a Twitter bio. That doesn't mean anything, but yeah.
No, I know. But she does a lot of polling. She's a sex worker. But she's also kind of a performance artist. Yeah,
the gangbang thing,
birthday gangbang.
Yeah,
that's what that was, which we never discussed.
But she's very successful in business, so you should all take a lesson.
She is. I mean, she's I always say like, her, Richard Hanania, like occupy way too much space in my group chats. I always tell people to like just chill out. Like you're actually like feeding them their engagement farming. But anyway. She knows how to get attention.
Should we ask? Okay, we were literally just recording another episode, and we were talking about a tweet that Richard Hanania was circulating. And actually, this might be a very good question for you. We don't have to take too long with it, but there was a viral video going around with this comedian who was doing a bit about how she told a guy that she was going to go back to his place, but she told him she didn't want to have sex, and he said, fine. And so they cuddled all night, but then he didn't try to put the moves on her, and so she's
like, offended. Are you gay? Am I ugly?
Are you gay?
What's going on? Like something. There's a reason.
So the premise is that women are so unconsciously tired of consent culture that they secretly are going to be offended if the guy doesn't.
Wait! Try to make it. You guys are talking about this. They're not unconsciously tired. They're consciously tired.
Okay. So what do you make of this? I mean, you're a bachelor. Out in the world. How realistic is this?
I mean, I think it is. It's realistic. Yeah, like the problem with autistic guys, and I'm like in that range, is like I will say this. I took all the feminist stuff. Like I was never like lib, but I was okay with treating.
You're from
women
Oregon.
Yeah, but I was never like I was from Eastern Oregon, like Idaho
Oh,
part of Oregon.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
But
okay.
I took at face value kind of like I think like liberal egalitarian feminist presuppositions that men and women we should just treat each other the same. But like the issue is like the problem, and like I obviously have an evolutionary background. I understood that there were sex differences, but like I didn't really understand how deep they were. And you can't really treat men and women the same when men and women are fundamentally different. And so that did cause some issues because anyway, like I don't want to get into it. Like I'll tell you like there are things with like chivalry and other things, and I was like, oh well, I can't do that because and I did get like rebuked for like opening doors when I was younger. So I stopped doing that. Then I got yelled at about doing that. And I was just like, what's going on? And so now I just like what I tell young men is just like all this feminist bullshit about equality and stuff. Like, yeah, you got to treat them respectfully, but just like don't take anything literally. You take it literally, and it's just gonna blow in your face, And they're not gonna apologize for it. They're just gonna think you're retarded, And you kind of are. You kind of are, I mean, it's just like so. I understand. Like, I watched it. I mean, it was a little cringe, but I guess what I would say is also part of it is like it's a generational thing. Um, um, I think porn has had an effect on uh, attitudes towards violence, coercion, and stuff. So I'm gonna put that out there. I think younger generations of women are used to different things, and so that's also another reason why I kind of have a different view of the whole. So when I was in college, there was a whole like training where you had to ask at every stage.
Right, the affirmative consent thing. This was the what was the college that Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. This was they were the first to like implement this in a very big way.
Yes.
May I touch you here? May I touch you here? And it was a laughing stock.
Nobody really did it, but if you tried to do it, people would laugh at you. So like the whole thing was like it's kind of one of those things you kind of take it seriously, not literally. I mean, I will tell you guys like I did kiss someone recently, and I asked them if I could because I didn't know them.
We just talked about
we were just talking about this.
Talking
okay,
about
and Sarah thought that was weird.
Well, okay, like I did it because, and I probably shouldn't have done it because she had already made the move on me, but it's a reflex, and I'm stronger than her, so I was like, I asked, and later she brought it up, and she was like, that wasn't cool.
Not cool? I was thinking that but there's a way of doing it that is gentlemanly. I don't. It depends on how you're doing it. Like
that requires more effort, and for things to come together in this like perfect way. There's a way. I agree with you that there's a way, but I think that's a harder thing to do well.
I don't remember asking, so that means that's my training.
Yeah,
I didn't remember asking. Wow. She brought it up.
Wow.
And so that was my training, and also like I didn't. I had gotten a signal from her that she liked me. So I already knew that she liked me, but my training kicked in.
Yeah.
Like if I was rational, I
would be offended. I would get it. I think if I gave like a big green light and then
it was a big
still that, and then that wasn't, the response wasn't like, okay, now we got here we are.
No, I mean I did have a very positive response to be fair.
Right,
I had a very positive response.
Like take yes for an answer kind of thing. Like if that what I would get offended. I know that I would just a little. So bit.
I think
it depends on how green of a.
No, I will say consciously.
We don't have to go into this.
This is like TMI, but I will say consciously, like we were like engaging each other for like an hour and like talking. I did get a vibe, but in the back of my head, I was also worried.
Sure.
Well, whatever. Maybe there could be an accusation or whatever. And so, because she was just like I liked you within like. Anyway, and but I was like, but you gotta cover your, and like I'm a public person now, I guess, so
I think men are put into a really impossible position, and the more they are the kind of men who would be like sent, like who would get targeted by Me Too, or like who find Me Too threatening, like I think it tends to be like this credentialed kind of like elite-ish class. It doesn't have to be fully elite, but like educated people who are really like on like these are their cultural currents. I think that guys are thinking about it all the time and they're put in a tough position. So I get it. I understand the tough position.
So do you guys know what's happening in Silicon Valley? Because multiple women have complained or brought it up to me. Some of them complaining pretty vociferously. Do you know what's happening in Silicon Valley with the sexual harassment stuff? So after Me Too, basically males in tech, in particular executives, they are like Salafis when it comes to engaging with women. So they will never be in a room alone with any female, especially a subordinate. They will never casually. So I have a friend, anyway, attractive young woman, and she was complaining to me that the CEO of her startup, he will casually banter with the bros, but he always walks by and never makes eye contact.
Yeah, this is a disaster for women.
I mean,
and workplace. This is happening in corporate too.
Yeah, you can't have drinks afterwards. You can't
no.
you can't casually
business
anything.
Women aren't
double
going on
dates
business
only.
trips.
Like you have to, you bring your spouse along, and then we'll do a double date. That's how we can hang out, but otherwise we can't.
It's all it all sounds very awkward. And I've talked to women who actually left the corporate tech world in Silicon Valley to do a startup because they thought that they were never going to ultimately advance beyond a certain stage, because they were not developing a rapport with their reports that other people were developing with the other people that they were men. Because there was no risk there, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's kind of tragic. I don't know what to do about it because, you know, it's the culture we live in. And I mean, I'm sure it's affected me a little bit.
I mean, I think it's more than just, I think it's social too. It's not just like in work contexts only. Like I've seen it affect like my social context, where there's some men who I know, who I like met more recently, and they will not do things with me, just me, you know, like it has to be, oh, we'll like, you know, double dates, like we do double dates, you know, even if it's like a Zoom thing, you know, or like I have to like I have to bring my protective woman, like my
right. Wow.
And I think that's really sad, but they are sensitive and they're like in positions of power or whatever, like in public, they're, you know, public people. So they feel weird about it with me. Only
the optics.
Me. Yeah.
They're also concerned with the optics.
Yeah.
The optics.
See,
you know,
and
this is stuff
it's an unintended consequence of the Me Too. But the Me Too women would say, the Me Too activists would say, well, these men have to figure it out. Male tears. You can't figure out how to be normal with a woman.
It's my tears, though.
It's not
I'm
my
the one
job
that's
to
suffering.
educate
They're
you.
not suffering.
I know.
Like, that's
this is a serious unforeseen consequence of this movement that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough, because it's subtle and it's hard to know if it's happening. Like, am I just crazy? Maybe I wasn't promoted. Maybe I wasn't invited to this thing for another reason. Who knows?
I thought it was like exactly, I predict that day one, I was like, this is exactly what's going to happen. Like the next step is that men are going to stop like spending any time. And I you know, I've experienced that even before the Me Too era. My generation, I guess, I've never had that kind of like, I can tell that men who are in positions of power over me feel kind of uncomfortable, like in my presence. You know what I mean? Like they're like, no, we have to have the door open. We can't just have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like that just can't happen. They're never going to mentor me. They're never, you know, like that's never going to happen. And that's always been
a loss.
for me. You know, it's a huge loss. It's a huge loss. There's not a lot of women who are willing to mentor other women. There's not a lot of women just around, period. Like it's just.
Well, so there's another aspect, you know, I've talked about this on Twitter. I haven't like written about it because it's not my like thing. But like all male spaces, like there's no explicit all male spaces anymore, but I'm in a fair number of all male group chats. And one thing that you notice, so like I'm in, like, I'll give you a concrete example. I'm in like a very right-wing group chat that has a few women. And then I'm in a group chat that's mostly science and it's all guys, and it's from like socialist to whatever, right wing. And the two group chats are very different because when there's women there, men behave a certain way, whatever. But when it's just men, we behave differently. We have so for example, like, you know, look, if it's just only men, I don't really think cancel culture would exist. It's just like left-wing men are totally different when it's private and it's just the bros. They are performing partly because like they care what women think, whatever. But it's like it's totally different. It's totally different. I've seen this with academic men that are supposedly left-wing, and you know, they're very collegial, bro-ish. And then like, you know, we have arguments, we have disagreements, but whatever, it is what it is. And I don't know, it's just weird because I have never consciously thought about it, but recently I've been starting to realize that I think a lot of us, especially straight men, honestly. We feel that the way we are viewed as threatening and dangerous and bad and like the source of all evil, and we're just kind of conditioned to that. And a lot of the liberal ones especially, will agree with that in public, at least performatively. But then, like, if it's in an all male space, they're just bros. You revert back to nature, and it's very casual. It's very, I don't know. It's like, if you were talking to me when I was like a teenager, I probably would be like, oh, well, that's immature. Like, you could just like be casual and hang out with women and stuff like that. And maybe there was a space and a time where you could do that, but definitely not now. And like with some women, like with Sarah, I'd be pretty chill. But like,
Well, she's
you
a
never
man.
know. You never know. Yeah, she is. She has dysmorphia, but no, you never know with what type of, candidly, like what type of woman, and she's not going to understand. And like some of these women have never been exposed to what straight men are really like.
Yeah, I know.
Like they don't really understand
Yeah.
us, like we don't understand you in some ways. But at least women talk about their feelings and their values and their views in public, and it's socially licit. And women can also talk about men. Like straight men, like, yeah, there's the manosphere, but it's retarded. They're like, it's just stupid, right? Like real like discussions of masculinity do not really happen. And there's also like, and one last thing I'll say is like, I feel like our sexuality is seen as threatening. So for example, I generally do not like say like, oh, like some young chick celebrity is hot on social media, because people would be like, oh, that's creepy, that's like, whatever, bad. But like I've seen women do stuff, like all sorts of creepy stuff about guys, that's okay. I've seen gay guys do the same thing about guys. So it's like gay male sexuality and female sexuality is great, but our sexuality is not great. And like, kind of sucks, because like we're as horny as gay men. So, we're thinking about it all the time, So it's like kind of like bottling it up is just kind of weird, because like a lot of younger women don't know what we're really like, I guess. I don't know.
I think this is so true. It's the mainstream culture is a femosphere at this point, right? I mean, it's like it's there's a sort of gay men and women are the dominant sensibility, and you have kind of, and I'm speaking in stereotypes, so people don't get mad at me, but you have like, traditional masculine kind of bonding is just cordoned off, and it gets viewed as the manosphere, but that's an extreme, very fringe, outlying version of it. But like actual men being regular men is something that is almost, it's like behind a curtain. And I think there's entire generations of women coming up that don't even know what to make of them. I mean, it's like I was something, it was like I don't know, it was somebody was very young. I think she was like a college age person was like talking about some guy is acting like this, and why is he saying this? And it's like, well, he's just joking. He's trying to make you laugh. He's trying to make you laugh. Actually, that's what guys do.
Yes.
And it was like, it hadn't occurred to her.
There's also like a lack of media representation as well. Like you don't see like that when you see men acting like men, it's usually like that's the bad guy. Like that,
or like a just like a dope, like a
that's
clown.
That's clown. That's
we're either the villain or the dupe, right? So we're usually kind of like the passive beta, whatever, you can use whatever word, or we're the antagonist. We're the villain, we're the foil. And so there's a caricature out there of us. So for example, like, look, we do not like privately, we do not talk about feelings and stuff all the time. And like, it's nice to be around people that don't like ask you why you're not talking about feelings all the time, because you're not thinking about it most of the time. It's just like, we have other priorities, like, a lot of guys are into sports and video games and food and work and all these. There's a lot of things you can talk about. It's fine. But like, when you're in a relationship with a woman in the modern West, it's always like, why aren't you talking about your feelings? Why aren't you? And I'm just like, okay, well, you know what? Like, we're kind of disabled that way, But it's like, we're not always like, why aren't you like into this video game? Actually, I have some friends who are kind of autistic who did that to their girlfriends, and they would play video games. I'm friends with their girlfriends, or I was more friends with their girlfriends anyway. And like, she would tell me, like, my friend would tell me, like, yeah, I play with the video games because like he doesn't get why I'm not into video games. And I'm like, yeah, it's because he's autistic and he's too stupid to understand that you're not going to like all the things he likes. You know what I'm saying? And I was kind of pissed on her behalf.
She's going along with it. She's just,
but she really liked the guy. I still don't understand why. I don't want to get into it. But you know, she really liked him, so she was faking it. But a lot of guys, we fake it too. You know?
Right. Totally.
Like we're just like oh, okay, like we're gonna have this like long 2-hour conversation about feelings I don't have. What the fuck?
But I do think that men, I mean, this is not a novel observation, but men need women because men don't talk about their feelings with other
Sure.
men. They need a primary partner. They need a female partner. It's hard for them to not be in a relationship because that's the only valve for that.
No.
Right.
So you know, I was in another chat. So I hang out with younger people. This young guy was like asking, what do you guys think about the war between men and women? And I'm just like, and I run the group chat, so I'm like, this conversation is not happening. That's retarded. There can't be men without women. There can't be women without men. Like, there is no war. Like, that's just a stupid way to frame it. Like, you can't. It's like two fists punching each other on the same body. Is the way I explained it to him. So when it's like straight people, like men and women are very different. Obviously, we drive each other crazy, but we're obsessed with each other. That's just how it is. You know, until we can like re-engineer our brains, that's how we are, and we just have to deal with this structurally, you know? And I think like some of the problems that you have with like some of these incel manospheres is like they're trying to like they're almost like blank slate-y and assuming women are actually like men and they're actually just being obtuse and evil. No, they actually want to cry all the time because that's their nature. Okay? Like you know, like they're not trying to manipulate you. They actually have those feelings. And I cry once a year, okay? And it's not because like I'm holding it in. I just don't feel it most of the time, okay?
Is it on like a certain day of the year, or what do you mean?
It's like the purge.
I'm giving you an average. I probably like maybe it.
I didn't know if you had like a special day that you.
I don't know. I felt like really teary the first time my son had to go to emergency room because he got food poisoning. Mm-hmm. Okay,
like you didn't cry when your children were born.
I didn't cry, but I felt a little teary. But I mostly just felt. I mostly just excuse me. I mostly just felt, holy shit, I gotta grow up. You know, like it really. I mean, I'm compressing the feeling.
That's fine. Do people cry when their children are? I didn't. I
thought
I've seen that.
Is that a thing? I don't, but I'm not a crier either. That's my problem.
That's because you're a man.
Yeah. Do you think that women control cancel culture and that it is very rare for a straight man to go after somebody and cancel somebody? This is a huge pet theory of mine, and I get pushback for it.
Well, no, I think I agree with you in the general framework. I think cancel culture is taking so it's about like Corey Clark. I think you've had Corey Clark on. She's talked about like women care more about fairness and truth or fairness or like niceness than truth. Okay. This is like a stylized fact. And, you know, I've talked to academics who've seen the same thing. You know, it's the women that are driving the politicization of academia, the suppression of facts that are uncomfortable because women don't like being uncomfortable, you know, and they police each other. They police their husbands and they demand their husbands police other people. You know, we on the right, if you're a right-wing man, they have no power over you. Right. But if you're left-wing man, you're embedded in this, like, you know, gynocracy.
I feel bad for them, but at the same time, they irritate me a lot more than the women irritate me. Like
the left wing,
because a lot of times they're faking it. A lot of times they're performative.
So when I'll be talking to a left wing man, I'm kind of like, hey, drop the act.
Right, you're safe.
You're in a safe space here. But then I think many of them really do buy into it. Like maybe it's just been like because this is their whole world and they have no other exposure.
You can believe in ideologies. You can believe in ideologies, and you know. I'm just saying that if it was just men in academia today, for example, this is like an environment I know, it would. I do not believe cancel culture would exist. I just don't. And when I get canceled, it's always. It's very bittersweet for me. It's always the white women that come after me, you know? Like, it's like human waves of white women, you know? And I get Indians messaging, they're like, why are these white women so racist? I'm like, well, you know, I'm a white supremacist. That's just like really confused, you know?
I get brown women too. I
don't know that it's just
brown
white
women do a really good job being like white women, okay?
The South Asian women are like,
they're
like, I mean, they're trying.
Plenty of black women cancel. Yeah. I don't know about that.
Well, I don't interact much with Black Twitter, so it just doesn't. It's not Black Twitter is not part of mine.
We're more likely.
I know you have Megan. You've talked.
Megan.
I've never.
Razib's in a very white space, so it's only the white women who are going to see him in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. but so yeah, I think I agree with you in general, Megan. I do think though in a lot of things, you were saying like I think you said, because I'm listening to your podcast, are men superior? Okay. I don't know if we're superior, but we're more competitive. And so sometimes the best cancelers, like the tribunes of the plebes, the tribunes of the women, are some guy. Okay. Like some like soy-faced guy who's really good at canceling. Whereas the women are like cheering him on, like they're like the wind beneath his, wings kind of stuff. So, some of the cancelers that come after me, the leaders, the triggerers are often male, and then like this massive swell of women comes in, and usually most of the people that are DMing me, sorry bro, are literally dudes. And sometimes they're women. Like it's like I'll give it like an 8-to-1 ratio or something, like I have a group chat that's like science only, and it wasn't like sex filtered in any way, and there's never been a woman in it. There are a few women that I can name who would be potential, but basically, women tend to fall in line even if they disagree with the woke stuff. They're really stressed. Okay, there's a woman that I know. She is well known for being tough as nails, extremely accomplished scientist. I think she will get a MacArthur Genius if she hasn't had one yet. And like if you meet her at a conference, she is like Lady Thatcher or something. Okay, so I did this E.O. Wilson thing in defense of him a couple of years ago, and then I got canceled for it because I shouldn't have organized it because I'm bad. And anyways, what happened is she initially shined out enthusiastically, and then later she got stressed out. What if we get canceled? And she was literally like, I thought she was gonna cry. I was like, what the hell? Like you have like some hormonal problem. And then I realized, I don't really care if a bunch of retarded people scream at me. You know what I'm saying? And say bad things about me. Most people don't seem to be like that. And there's definitely somewhat of a sex difference too, where it's like, very few women.
It's stupid to be like that. That's why.
Well, she wants her MacArthur. She does not want to get in.
Well, it's not just in that kind of deliberate, selfish way.
No, she was.
It's like
she was viscerally scared.
Like it. Yeah,
she was viscerally scared.
It makes sense to me why women, like being the kind of animal that we are, being the reproducing the way we reproduce, that we would be extremely worried about the kind of reputational like fallback or
social exclusion.
Right. And that I think it's freakish actually to be a woman and not have trouble with it. Like I think I'm a little bit like that. I don't have much trouble with it, and I think that there's something like not wrong with you, not morally, but like biological.
Well, you know what I mean? It's an anti-adaptive trait.
Right. And you actually wouldn't like. I think about like, would I want my daughter to be like me in this way? And I think a little, but not a lot. Like just enough that she can, build her own like independent life and not like follow the herd off a cliff, but not the way that I am, where it's, it's actually super detrimental. And more detrimental to women, I think, than men.
Yeah, women have reputational. So my daughter is a lot like me, actually, of my 3 kids, but she's not as aggressive. So far, she's 12, so we'll see. But she's not as aggressive. She has a lot of the same takes, a lot of the same opinions as me, but she's not as aggressive, and she knows how to manipulate her social scene much better. So, I think like, if I was like a little higher on the E, lower on the T, I would be not who I am. But obviously, that's not how it is. And anyway, all this just goes to show it's like I just try to be like accepting and understanding of where people are starting out from and what they bring to the table. And because sometimes people are like, how can you be so equanimous or whatever in the face of these people screaming at you? And I'm like, sometimes I just think it's their nature. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever thing was gonna happen, these people were gonna be screaming at the Jew or the kulak or whatever. They were going to be screaming. They're screamers with the mob. It's their nature. And I actually talked to a friend of mine, a woman. She became unwoke because basically she got canceled in graduate school. It was a silent cancellation, not well known. But I talked to her recently and I was like, oh, so you were woke. What was that? She was like, it's great. She was like, it was just great. Like I felt like so good about myself and what I was doing in the world. And, everybody was, I agreed with everybody and we all understood the truth. And I'm like, so how do you feel now? She's like, I just feel like crap because like, I know it's all fake and I know how bad it is and I don't have a solution. So anyway, that was
well, now she can be in the heterodox community and everybody can agree and she can feel good and like they're all with the truth.
So I think that I will say that with the natalist con, I mean the way that you're describing it with the factions that truly have like a seed of animosity somewhere there, that to me sounds like heterodoxy in a way that actually the IDW heterodoxy.
Yeah, that's actual heterodoxy.
That's actual heterodoxy, but that's a very good thing, right? And
well, I mean, I don't know if you guys, I mean, you know, there's a thing like, have you ever seen this thing where guys like get into a fight and then they become good friends afterwards?
Yeah,
I mean, I did that, you know, and I think
girls don't do that. Girls don't get into fights and become friends.
That's the problem. So it's like, you know, for example, it's like I'm atheist, and like I have a lot of friends. Like my best friend in Austin is a conservative Catholic. His wife runs a pro-life organization, you know? So obviously we have like ideological differences, you know, they hope that I'll see the light and all that stuff. But like, and like we've never fought. We've never even had any strong disagreement. It's just like, yeah, I really disagree with you a lot in a deep, fundamental way. I actually don't care if he changes his opinion. He obviously wants me to change my opinion. So there's just like different ways of being comfortable with difference. I think like part of it is like, so, you know, like, you know, the whole Israel Jews thing, right? Like that's what really broke a lot of the heterodox academy or the heterodox people and all this stuff. And like you see like these identitarian splits now. And I think partly it's because people are suspicious what's behind the mask. What are you really saying if you're saying that like there should be a two-state solution or that there's a genocide in Gaza? Like I'm looking at it from the Jewish perspective here, you know, are you really anti-Semitic? You know, what do you mean by you're asking questions? And so I think on some level you have to start out with having a positive view of where the person is coming from and that they were your friend before and they're your friend now. You just have some deep disagreement on some issue, but the issue isn't who they are. Like they weren't secretly anti-Semitic all along, right? And I'm saying this for anything. So if I have a friend, I don't know, if I have a friend who's like, you know, I really disagree with race mixing and you shouldn't have had mixed race kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, that's fucking weird. You know, but like if he doesn't want like to kill my kids or what, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like
I get what you're trying to say, but I also, you know, I think about like the, you know, the communists and the Ayatollah kind of thing. Like it's the friendships can only go so far if in fact that, you know, they have a kind of worldview that ultimately if they had it their way, your kids wouldn't exist. I mean, I think that there are some limitations there to friendships. Having said that, I feel that intellectually, but I have no difficulty with, you know, actually having those friendships in real life. I just find them like troubling in some way, like ideologically.
There are some people like, you know, some anti-Semites like we will not be friends with Jews, you know, and obviously vice versa. Like, you know, if you're a Jewish person, why would you be friends with a Nazi? I get there's boundary conditions. I just think that right now in American culture, especially on the left, but sometimes on the right as well, people narrow their horizon and they don't expose themselves to different types of people. And that results in, kind of say dehumanization, but it's a lack of like understanding of the humanity of the other. And I think that's a problem. I think abstractly we know this. We all say the right words. You know what I'm saying?
But we don't practice it.
We don't. And, you know, so I like I said, like probably it's because I'm just disagreeable and a dick. But like I do say things that disagree with the people I'm around all the time. So when I'm around libs, I'm always like very open about my views. Like I don't really have I have a good opinion about anti-discrimination laws. I think like different like ethnic groups will probably just be distributed differently in different professions because of different aptitudes. Like I'll just like say that stuff. Yeah, it shocks people, but they also know that I'm a nice person and I treat people nicely. And so they have to like think about that. And then among my religious friends, you know, a lot of them will say like, I mean, like I'm giving you a literal quote. I'm not trying to like self-aggrandize, but like you're like the most Christian person I know in terms of like how you like, you know, you're there for your friends and, you know, you try to do right. But I'm also an atheist. They know that because I just tell them like, you know, sometimes people will be like, you know, because we're all Christian here and I'll just raise my hand and be like, no, I'm an atheist, you know? And so that's just, I mean, I know not everyone's like that, whatever. I've always been like that. But I think that is a way to actually do my part, I think, to show that we do have a lot in common. And, you know, if you're a Christian, you said we're all children of God. Even the people going to hell are children of God. Like, that's what I tell my Christian friends. You know what I'm saying? God believes in them, even if you don't want to have anything to do with them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know that when you read the New Testament. You read the New Testament. Who did Jesus hang out with? They know that. They know that intellectually, right? So put into practice what you say you believe every single Sunday, right? And if you're not a religious person, if you're a secular person, you believe in justice, you believe that human nature is fundamentally good, then show it. Show it in the way you live, right? Don't like keep yourself comfortable, because if you're comfortable, you never grow. Like if you're comfortable, if you just want to be comfortable, attach yourself up to like the simulation machine and put drugs into your system and all that stuff, right? You don't actually like live in the world. And that's what we're doing a little bit, I think. Kind of like ranting a little bit, but I've been thinking about it. I think that's what a lot of people are doing step by step. We're retreating, like the whole loneliness. Like I have a lot of friends, like I put myself out there, but a lot of people today like don't. Like I have like a lot of friends who say that they go to social things because I invite them. Like way too many people say that. Like partly they're just like relying on me, but partly they just don't put themselves out there anymore, Yeah. But I don't think that was like that 50 years ago, I think people are withdrawing to their devices, to their Netflix, to their
people have always needed a reason though to meet. You know what I mean? Whether that be somebody inviting you or some kind of like shared tradition.
Sure. And with remote work,
like something's happening, an event, and that event is a reason that we're all coming together.
But you had to go. I don't know. I mean, people still go to coffee shops and sit there and work, right? I guess so. But I just feel that it's probably less. I mean, I never hang out in coffee shops anymore.
Introverts plus remote work is toxic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For them.
Introvert plus remote work plus like DoorDash, like everything delivered all the time. I don't go to the store because I shop on Amazon. Like I don't
experience this. But like introverted people, many of them who I've known in my life tell me like they have reduced energy after they interact with a lot of people. I get it. There's a rationale for you not to do that, right? So it's like you need to be forced to do that. And I don't know what it is. Like we can hypothesize, but it's a real issue. And it's like a symptom of the broader issue of polarization, of atomization that we're alluding to. Like the conversations that you want to have are not being had because people aren't coming back together. It's because they're living on their little islands. I mean, some of these online communities that you guys talk about that lots of reported covers, they're insane. They are so detached from reality and the concrete world that's out of control. It's like those guys, like I saw something and I don't think this was a parody, and it was like you should not have a relationship with a woman because that's gay.
Yeah, no, well, okay.
What? This is like Barry Weiss is a Nazi.
No, but like literally, it's like because they have estrogen, and they're gonna feminize you and make you and like
wait,
it wasn't
that's
a parody.
gay.
Yes. So it's we are like, but this is a real view that a small number of people are loudly tripping on the internet, and then what happens on the internet starts to bleed into reality, right? Into like the real world. Like that's what has started happening over the last 10 years. Like all pop culture now seems to siphon through the internet, and so I used to ignore this stuff, but now I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like even like the words I use, like sus and stuff like, like where did that come from? I mean, it came from the internet. Like stuff comes from the internet, so you got to be careful about what's on the internet.
Yeah.
That I mean, I think what you're alluding to is like a really interesting thing. I like tweeted about it, but I didn't. Like I thought about maybe writing more about it, but it's a kind of special online community that is deeply harmful in a very unique way and becomes out of touch with the reality in a very unique way. And I think we're all just going to have, like, this is what we're going to have, our little over-socialized communities that, unless people start to bring in formal structures that push back against all the different ways that these, I'm calling over-socialized communities.
But so I understand when you said online community, that doesn't even make any sense to a Zoomer. That's just a community.
Yeah,
like a lot of their social relationships and they're like start online, and the real life is a complement, something they get to later. And so that's kind of the stuff that like kind of freaks me out.
Yes.
Especially since those are not communities. What they're experiencing is not a community. In the way that
we
matters.
Need concrete, real input, and like to see someone's face. Anyway, we all know this. We all know what's going on here.
See someone's face, but also you need boundaries, you need like hierarchies, you need, like it can't be so porous.
So I mean, we know what happened with Tumblr with all the weird identities. Right. That's just because they were just like making crap up on the fly and one-upping each other. In the real world, someone would start laughing at some point.
Yeah.
But on the message thread, no one's laughing. They're just like liking, or whatever they do, and like nobody wants to be that person to just like, tell the person like, dude, you're not a cat. Get over yourself. Like, again, we laugh about things and then like a year later we're gonna get canceled because we're laughing because
No, I know.
Yeah, it's already too far. The cat thing is already too far.
No, the
Like,
cat
it
thing
really
is that's a very basic identity at this point. Wow. Well, we should wrap up, but
this was great. Thanks.
we have a
Razib.
burning question actually for you before we let you go, and this concerns our community, our listener community in the Substack comments. You are almost always the first one
no, not
to
the
post a well, you like to say there, you and maybe one or two other people
Yeah,
are
like, this
in
guy beats me all the
constant
time now.
competition for first person to leave a comment after we drop an episode. Sometimes it's within seconds of posting the episode.
I do it to Matt Iglesias and Freddie. I do it to Matt Iglesias and Freddie too. Well, I have 3 monitors. One monitor in the middle is my work monitor. The monitor on the right has like my coding window on the left, and the monitor on my right has my chats and my emails. So when I get an email and I see it, I click and I try to type first. Yeah. And so the thing with the first thing is like, this is like a very retarded move. And so it's like, I got banned for like a week from Scott Alexander's blog for doing it. Because like you're not supposed to do it, but Freddie lets me do it. There was an argument in Matt Iglesias' comment section whether I should be allowed to do it, but dude, I've been paying for him for 3 years, so I was like, I think I get the privilege of doing it, because like I'm up at 3:30 in the morning when he's posting. I just do it because like I just like to clown around and troll, and I understand I probably shouldn't do it because like I have a brand and I write serious things, but I just can't help myself. And like,
I think this is your brand. I think this is part of your brand.
I think it is your brand.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes people have like, one guy emailed me, he's like, I saw you did you kept doing first on Freddie's posts. I didn't know who you were, and I clicked through and I was like, wow, this stuff is interesting. So I subscribed.
It's good. It's a good calling card.
But he was just like, he was like, yeah, I was like, this person's really dumb. Why are they even reading Freddie's stuff? I think it's funny. I just think it's like, it's amusing, I think I'm bringing like amusement to people's lives. So that's why I do it. I think people are amused.
Okay. So, but if people want to get in on the action, they need to have 3 screens up is what you're saying. And,
yeah.
I mean, Sarah knows I respond to group chats really fast too.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that.
I automatically see it out of the corner of my eye.
But we're only on like one kind of half group chat together, which is surprising. There's not enough. They're not.
I'm in all the guy group chats that you're excluded from.
Okay, probably.
You're kind of in the worst position because you're female presenting, but you're a man on the inside.
I know,
so you're hanging out with all these ladies.
She's true trans.
I don't have female. Like I'm not in any kind of female. Like Megan is. Megan has the
I know
the
it's my business,
channels, but I don't. What are they like, Megan? What's the inside scoop on the
I can't tell you. They're very curious about you, though, Sarah. They always want to know when you're going to come to an unspeakeasy retreat, and they want to know all about you, and they want to know like what your personal life is like, how many kids you really have.
Like there's nothing else to see. You know what I mean? Like this is it. This is
if you don't talk about your personal life, people really want to know. So.
But it's not like
your top Googles.
It's just like,
but if you can see your top Googles, and like I always have stuff about my wife and kids.
That's everybody's top Google, by the way. If you type your name into Google, it'll say husband. I feel like a lot.
But I feel like it's higher if you don't talk about it all the time because people with part of their brand, they already know, Yeah. But if you don't mention it or you allude to it glancingly, people want to dig deeper. I feel like I have several friends, they're scientists, where it was like above their science, and I was like, that's because you don't talk about anything personal on Twitter. If you like look at other people who like post their dogs and their kids and their wives and their husbands, they don't have that as their top.
But that must happen to people who are within a certain age range, right? Like after like you're 75, no one cares about your husband or wife.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. I have no idea what the motivation is because I've never done it. All right, we should probably.
All right, so how do we find you? Now's the part where you can tell us.
Okay, so Razib.com, I put all most of the links, I think.
Razib.com, which I looked it up. It's real, but it's like really old kind of. You
Okay,
need
you
to
want me to
update
change
this.
it now? You want me to do
No.
Linktree anyway?
You need to you need to update it just a
Okay,
little
Sarah
bit.
told me I need to Linktree. If like someone with such a aesthetic sense that's like, retarded as Sarah is saying that, I need to update it. But anyway, so I mostly write on my Substack, razibkhan.com. You can follow me on Twitter. My podcast is part of my Substack, but you can find it on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, I write for Palladium Magazine a lot now. I am going to be writing for American Conservative again for the first time in 21 years soon. And I just write for other random places like India Today or National Review or Quillette. So I have like a RSS feed if anyone still uses that. If you subscribe to that, all my stuff gets pushed in. I also write for Unheard. Just all the random places that people write. I'm also I'll just like say this. I am looking to talk to people who have startups. If you need an advisor, basically if you're in deep tech, biotech, you need hookups with talent and money. Just reach out, drop it into my DMs or email. I've been doing that a lot recently, and it's fun, and it's great to hear about new people doing new things. So,
oh, okay. Well, we'll be getting in touch with you about that if you can find money. So good to know.
We need talent and money.
Yeah, exactly. All right, great. We'll call you later. Well, Razib Khan, thank you. A pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Bye, guys.
You have reached the end of the episode, which probably means you like our content. Why don't you join our Substack right now? You can become a paying subscriber at a specialplace.substack.com. You can join our listener community, leave comments, interact with everybody. We'll see you in there. It is totally worth it. So please join us, a specialplace.substack.com. And thanks for listening.